Hello, this is Bob, and I'll be reading the Tuesday, March 31st, 2026 edition of the Fall River Herald News. Today's weather will be breezy in the morning and with some periods of rain, 58 to 65 for a high, 48 to 55 for a low. On Wednesday, a shower and a thunderstorm around 63 to 70 for a high, 38 to 45 for a low. Thursday, a little rain, but it'll be cooler, 43 to 50 for a high, 35 to 42 for a low. Friday, periods of rain again, 48 to 55 for a high, 39 to 46 for a low. And Saturday, we're looking at low clouds, 46 to 53 for a high, 39 to 46 for a low. Sunrise was at 6:29 this morning, and it sets tonight at 7:09. The first article on the front page is entitled, $24 million project to cap the landfill could stretch to 70 feet tall. The town hit a bump in its plan to move forward with capping its old dump at the March 24th Board of Selectmen's meeting. But rather than kicking the can down the road, when it comes to cleaning up its act once and for all, landfill capping is sure to mar the complexion of Route 6's main commercial strip with a sizable bump, rising 70 feet in the air with a footprint of 6 acres. The former landfill closed in 1983. A small portion sits on town property, while the remaining land of the 22-acre plot is privately owned by Paul and Michelle LaFlame. For decades, the town has lived a charmed life, skirting the consequences of a ding from the state's Department of Environmental Protection that could order Swansea to take care of its decades-old mess at any time. But the risk of an uncapped, ominous liability, said Select Board Chairman Steve Kitchen, who deliberated the matter with his colleagues for nearly an hour, is far greater than a capped liability. The prospect of a towering mound of imported soil from excavation sites around the state loomed large as the board launched an hour-long inquiry with project representatives and Highway Superintendent William Anderson to learn about the project, the mention of which has lurked in a harbor advisory meeting, was heard in a few Conservation Commission meetings, and caused a murmur at 2 public hearings. Abutter Dave Fernandez took the stand to comment on the oddity of the matter making municipal circuit without much public input. The old dump, located along a private public way at 0 Sears Road or Route 6, has uneven topography that imported inert soil will fill in to create a plateau. Graded materials will be covered with a synthetic membrane, and 18 inches of topsoil and a sandy drainage layer will be added on top. The project will follow a standard design per Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection regulations. How long will it take? Well, 3 years, plus another, said Alistair Cunningham, a representative of the environmental remediation firm Charter Contracting Company. Anywhere between 2 and 50 truckloads of state-classified restricted materials will be entering Sears Road at the turnoff near the Route 6 U-Haul business across from Target, every day for 3 years. The 4th year will see the capping process complete, and for 30 years thereafter, Charter will monitor and maintain the site for leachate or other chemicals that could pose environmental risks. Imported soil that will be covered up by the membrane will undergo stringent analysis, including visual and chemical testing, to ensure that the 500,000 cubic yards of materials received from excavation sites are expected and permitted under state regulations. We're not bringing in anything worse than what's in the ground, Anderson told board members, signaling that the new soil would be comparable to the leftover materials from the dump itself. How much will it cost? Well, the project rings up at $24 million, with $8 million of that directly covering the cost of capping. Cunningham said the project would be carried out at no cost to the town, as other municipalities would sell the soil used for capping, thereby funding the project. An insurance mechanism of $1 million is a stipulation of the work, and any police details to quell traffic jams along Route 6 during rush hour would be reimbursable by charter. If the project with private owners and third-party contractors fizzles away, Kitchen mused the burden of capping the landfill will fall to the town. That is already seeking to recover close to $213,000 in back taxes associated with the dump. Looks aren't everything, but aesthetics has an impact when it comes to Swansea's efforts to update its Route 6, Route 118 sewer mains to attract business. A commercial cluster including a car wash, drive-through coffee shop, and drive-through quick-serve restaurant had blueprints approved by the Planning Board in September 2025. Cunningham said it was unlikely the landfill will be spotted from Route 6 or seen by drivers on Interstate 195. He added that the cap would probably be visible through the trees on a winter day. Cunningham doused doubt with landfill capping success stories. Charter recently completed Lynn-based Harbor Park project, over which a 30-acre public park blanketed the plateau of the cap. Ironically, said Cunningham, the park spurred 1,000 units of residential development without upsetting commercial or industrial presence. What about the abutters? I don't know, Anderson said. Fernandez, the lone abutter at 718 GAR Highway, came to the meeting armed with an idea. Take the landfill by eminent domain and sell it. He came with experience, having capped the Tiverton and Johnston landfills in the way of owning MC Souza sand and gravel. And he came with an impassioned warning. I'm going to retaliate, Fernandez said. I'm coming back after the town if my property depreciates. Led by Select Board Vice Chairman Michael Boudet, Selectmen Robert Medeiros and Kitchen agreed to stall a decision until the April 7th Board of Selectmen meeting. Kitchen requested renderings of approximate views of the cap from the State Highway and Route 6. According to the Standard Times, reports from 2013 to 2016, Dartmouth's Select Board was strenuously opposed to Boston Environmental Corporation's plan to cap the Cecil Smith landfill, an inactive dump like Swansea's with 1.4 million tons of contaminated soil, according to a letter sent to the DEP, which had the power to approve the project. The company has faced town opposition since it first floated a $16.5 million 3-year plan to cap the 23-acre landfill at 452 Old Fall River Road more than 2 years ago on behalf of present owner Mary Robinson. Opponents have said capping the landfill with dirty soil poses health risks to the community. BEC sued the town in 2014 for its position to block proposed plans to clean up the private landfill. The pending litigation remained unresolved in 2016. In Swansea, Medeiros reminded listeners that if the board favors the project, we're going to have to live with this for years and years and years, with Kitchen adding, or live with the financial consequences of doing nothing. Landfill capping, Kitchen said, would be placed on the Select Board agenda following the April 13th town election, whereafter a new member of the board could certainly impact the decision. This second front page article also involves Swansea. Swansea voters will determine key races, 2026 annual town election set for April 13th. It's nearly time to get out and vote as election season frenzy picks off with only a few short weeks to go until the 2026 annual town election scheduled for Monday, April 13th. In Swansea, the 2026 election will host a mayor race that has struck a competitive chord between two candidates in the running for one expiring select board seat. Voters will head to the polls to renew the terms of candidates running for re-election, have the opportunity to write in candidates to fill seats for positions none have campaigned for, and elect candidates to fill vacancies on a handful of municipal boards. Here's a breakdown of who's in the running. Returning candidate Gary Lund will face newcomer Alana Solitro in a bid to gain a 3-year seat on the town's Board of Selectmen. Lund lost his 2025 bid to snag a seat on the Select Board when Selectman Robert Madeira sought re-election and won by 49 votes. In January, Select Board Chairman Steve Kitchen announced he would not seek re-election. The Board of Selectmen is Swansea's 3-member legislative body, responsible for policy making and who oversee day-to-day operations of town government. School Committee woman Sonia Barbosa and School Committee Vice Chairman Thomas Rodriguez Jr. are seeking to renew their 3-year terms due to expire after this election. Voters will have the opportunity to select them both on the ballot. Town moderator and sewer commissioners seek to keep their posts. Paul Burke, who has served as Swansea's town moderator, is running uncontested to keep his position for the next 3 years. Jim Pelletier is also seeking re-election as water commissioner, a role that holds a 3-year term. Philip Cayley is running to fill a vacancy on the Swansea Planning Board and will make an uncontested bid to fill a seat on the Park Commission. Both positions carry a 5-year term. Planning Board's Ryan Pacheco will run uncontested to renew his seat on the board with a 4-year term. Michael Berby, chair of the Board of Tax Assessors, is running to remain on the board and start a new 3-year term. Angela R. Dolan, chairwoman of the Public Library's Trustees, is in the running to continue to serve in a new 3-year term. Newcomer Molly Ego is also in the running to join the board for a 3-year term. A vacant 3-year seat on the Community Preservation Committee, 3 2-year terms of constable, and a 1-year term on the Planning Board will ask voters to write in a name before making their way to the ballot. Polls on Monday, April 13th, will open at noon and close by 8 p.m. at Joseph Case High School at 70 School Street, Swansea, where all voting precincts are asked to report to the gymnasium through the rear door. To vote in the town election, you must be registered to vote by Friday, April 3rd by 5 p.m. All mail-in ballots must be received by the town clerk by Monday, April 6th by 5 p.m. To claim an absentee ballot, you must apply online and sign off on a physical absence, disability, or religious belief. The last day to apply for an in-person absentee ballot is Friday, April 10th. In-person early voting is scheduled to take place at the Swansea Town Hall at 81 Main Street on April 6, 7, and 8 from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. This article is entitled, Durfee Grad Honors Fallen Bataan Death March Heroes. Petty Officer 3rd Class Will Cruz Rivera, a Fall River native, recently traveled to White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico to honor the fallen heroes of the Bataan Death March. Cruz Rivera, a Durfee High School graduate, joined the Navy 3 years ago and serves as a retail specialist on the USS Bataan in Norfolk, Virginia, according to a community announcement. During the 3-day visit, the sailors participated in the 37th annual Bataan Memorial Death March on March 21st. They either ran or hiked the 15.6-mile route across the high desert terrain of the missile range. The visit also included stops at local schools and meetings with descendants of the Bataan survivors. The USS Bataan is named in honor of the American and Filipino troops who fought on the Bataan Peninsula during World War II. After a 3-month battle, they surrendered on April 9, 1942, leading to the infamous Bataan Death March, where approximately 75,000 American and Filipino prisoners were forced to march 65 miles to prison camps. Cruz Rivera said he joined the Navy to see the world and serve something greater than himself. He credits his hometown with teaching him these valuable lessons. The lessons that my hometown taught me that have stayed with me throughout my time in the Navy are to always stay true to yourself and to keep grinding every day, Cruz Rivera said in the announcement. My proudest accomplishment in the Navy was getting meritoriously advanced to E4 within my rating because it is very difficult for someone in my job rating to earn that, Cruz Rivera said. I'm also proud of being selected as Blue Jacket of the Quarter for Supply Department and going up to be Blue Jacket of the Quarter for the ship. The USS Bataan's primary mission is to land, train, and deploy a Marine landing force during sustained joint amphibious combat operations. The warship is crewed with sailors and Marines to support a wide range of joint maritime operations, including humanitarian disaster relief and evacuation missions. For more information about the USS Bataan, visit the ship's official U.S. Navy page at surflant.usff.navy.mil. This year, the Navy is commemorating its contribution to the nation's defense as the United States celebrates 250 years of independence. According to Navy officials, more than 250 years the Navy has sailed the globe, defending freedom and protecting prosperity. This article is from USA Today. Airports normalize as TSA agents get paid. Airports around the country are reporting a return to normalcy as Transportation Security Administration workers begin getting paid. With legislation stalled in Congress, President Donald Trump signed an order on March 27th redirecting federal funds already earmarked for the Department of Homeland Security to pay TSA workers amid a weeks-long partial government shutdown that's ballooned airport security wait times. However, it's only a temporary fix, and long-term funding still needs to be approved by lawmakers who are currently on a previously scheduled recess. At the direction of President Trump and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Wayne Mullen, TSA has immediately begun the process of paying its workforce. TSA officers should begin seeing paychecks as early as today, DHS Acting Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs Lauren Biss said in a statement to USA Today, expressing both TSA and DHS's gratitude for putting money back in the pockets of TSA workers who've been working without pay. Some workers reported receiving pay on the morning of March 30th, while airports around the country also reported began returning to some semblance of normalcy. By 8:20 a.m. Eastern Time on March 30th, Baltimore-Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport posted on X that all 4 of its security checkpoints were open with minimal wait times. By 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Philadelphia International Airport reported 10-minute waits, even with several security checkpoints temporarily closed. George Bush International Airport in Houston was reporting 5 to 12-minute waits by 9 a.m. Central Time, depending on the checkpoint. TSA saw its highest call-out rate yet on March 27th, 12.35% of workers, according to DHS. It was still 10.59%, or 3,101 officers, on March 29th, before they started receiving pay. The department shared the following call rates at individual airports on March 29th. Baltimore-Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport was 38.5%. George Bush International Airport was 36.4%, and William P. Hobey Airport in Houston was 34.1%. Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport was 34.1%, and Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was 33.7%. John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City was 29.6%, and Pittsburgh International Airport was 23.4%. Philadelphia International Airport was at 23%, and LaGuardia Airport in New York City was at 29.9%. Again, those percentages were the call-out rates for individual airports on March 29th. Travelers should check wait times with their respective airports. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest in the world, is still advising travelers to arrive at least 4 hours early for both domestic and international flights due to current federal conditions. Typically, travelers are advised to arrive 2 hours early for domestic flights and 3 hours early for international flights. And this next article also involves airlines. Airlines face fuel-driven shakeout, Delta and United in stronger positions due to liquidity. When United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby wrote to employees about the oil price surge earlier this month, the most telling line was not about fuel bills or flight cuts. It was about opportunity. If fuel prices stay elevated, he wrote, it could create a chance to buy assets, absorb network changes, etc., the language of a carrier that expects rivals to stumble. The latest price spike could become the first real financial stress test for U.S. airlines since the pandemic, with weaker carriers more likely to shrink, borrow, or absorb deeper losses, while stronger rivals keep investing and gaining market share. In Europe and parts of Asia, the Iran war's impact has already appeared in route disruptions, flight cuts, and downgraded outlooks. United is preparing for the worst. Kirby said the airline is modeling Brent oil as high as $175 a gallon and remaining above $100 through 2027. Brent was trading around $112 on March 27th. Under that scenario, United's annual fuel bill would rise by roughly $11 billion, more than twice its best-ever annual profit. Jet fuel was priced at $4.24 a gallon on March 26, compared with $2.50 just before the first U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran, according to trade group Airlines for America. Fuel accounts for about a quarter of airline operating costs, and airlines sell tickets weeks or months in advance, leaving them exposed when prices move faster than fares can follow. Credit ratings agency Moody's said low-cost and ultra-low-cost carriers would be hit hardest if fuel prices stay high, noting that JetBlue, Spirit, and Frontier were already unprofitable last year before the latest spike. Delta Airlines and United have the clearest ability to absorb a prolonged shock without abandoning strategy. Moody's said both carriers generated the highest operating margins among rated U.S. airlines last year, while S&P Global Ratings said low leverage, strong liquidity, and a higher share of premium revenue leave the two better positioned than their peers to handle sustained fuel increases. Beyond them, the outlook is less certain. American Airlines expects to end the March quarter with more than $10 billion in total available liquidity, but carries about $25 billion in long-term debt and says every 1 cent increase in jet fuel prices adds about $50 million to annual costs. American said it had no further comment beyond remarks by CEO Robert Isom at a recent J.P. Morgan conference, where he said the fuel run-up had added about $400 million to first quarter costs, and that the airline would aim to offset it through higher revenue while remaining flexible on capacity. Southwest Airlines has one of the sector's stronger balance sheet, but Fitch said a prolonged fuel shock could pressure earnings and liquidity, potentially forcing tougher cash allocation choices. Southwest declined to comment during its quiet period ahead of first quarter results. Alaska Air Group, which is integrating Hawaiian Airlines, told Reuters it had about $3 billion in liquidity and $18 billion in unencumbered assets, and said it had raised fares to offset higher fuel costs, had not cut capacity, and was reviewing its cost structure. If high fuel prices last, pressure is likely to build first at airlines where margins are already thin and turnarounds remain unfinished. JetBlue ended last year with about $2.5 billion in liquidity and no fuel hedges. S&P said JetBlue would be more vulnerable because it is expected to burn cash this year before improving towards break-even in 2027. Frontier Group reported about $874 million in liquidity while posting a net loss last year, leaving it with less room to absorb a prolonged fuel shock in a low-fare business. And JetBlue and Frontier did not respond to requests for comment. Spirit Airlines, which is in bankruptcy proceedings, warned in its latest annual report that the fuel spike posed an immediate and substantial negative impact to results and said a sustained increase could derail talks with creditors and force liquidation. The 2008 fuel spike and financial crisis triggered a merger wave that compressed a fragmented industry into 4 carriers controlling most U.S. air travel. This cycle is likely to widen competitive gaps before producing any formal consolidation. J.P. Morgan analysis said sustained high fuel prices could speed a shakeout among weaker low-cost carriers, ultimately improving the outlook for larger brand-loyal airlines after 2027. Fitch said the first signs of stress would likely to show up in deeper capacity cuts, parked aircraft, deferred spending, and new borrowing to boost liquidity. When you double your number 1 or number 2 cost items on your profit and loss statement almost overnight, that has a significant impact, Delta CEO Ed Bastian said. There are those that don't have any margin to absorb that. And we've now reached about the end of our time together. Today's weather again will be breezy and with morning rain, 58 to 65 for a high, 48 to 55 for a low. And tomorrow there'll be a shower and a thunderstorm around, 63 to 70 for a high, 38 to 45 for a low. This has been Bob reading the Tuesday, March 31st, 2026 edition of the Fall River Herald News. Thank you very much for listening and have a pleasant day.